folks, we're here tonight. We're in Romans chapter 15, verse 26. And we're going to start on 26. I think we did 26, but we'll recap it. So as we move into the rest of the chapter, but it reads like this in 15:26. For it has pleased them of Macedonia and Achaia to make a certain contribution for the poor saints which are at Jerusalem. So I remember talking about the poor saints at Jerusalem and how that Paul had a great, like we picture Paul and Barnabas, like a couple of hobos with a, little maybe sack on a stick, and that's all they got, But these guys were stopping at every church. Now I would imagine the collection back then probably was not just, here's a few dollars and you can put this in your pocket, or here's a check, or any of that stuff. They gave, food and all these kind of clothing and all kinds of contributions, kind of like we do, when we give, like to charity and the Goodwill and St. Paul's and all that, where we donate stuff. But these saints, they were donating all this stuff, and I would imagine by the time Paul was headed back to Jerusalem, he had a convoy. I imagine he had many pack mules that had loaded with stuff, because he's going back to feed a nation. I heard someone say that they sent, it was like 90 semi-truckloads of food to feed a city? 90 semi-truckloads, that wasn't enough. That's what they sent. You imagine 90 trucks of pack mules. But then you wonder, why, like King Agrippa, like Felix, and what was the other king there? Governor? Felix and I forget who they are. But you can see, like I think it was Felix that said he was hoping that Paul would give him something. He would have let Paul go. Well, if you look like a couple of hobos, you would be saying they don't have nothing to give. They weren't looking like hobos, folks. I think they had a pretty good offering out there. And if a king wanted some of it, it's probably something to look at, is what I'm thinking. And so it pleased these saints, it said, to make the contributions for the poor saints that were at Jerusalem. It wasn't like Paul had to beat it out of them, or, how these crooks do today, make you feel sorry. And they get up there, these TV evangelists with these big alligator tears, and, these poor kids. They've never seen one of them kids, and they've never sent $1 to them. But they're sure beating you down with them, you know what I'm saying? They had these little swollen bellies and all that, and showing you and begging you for money to feed them. And but they get those pictures. They all use the same pictures, the same places. And I've seen them go down and interview those people and say, how much money you received from this ministry? We've never received a dime from them. But millions of dollars have been given to them, you see. So I have no respect for them people whatsoever. And that faith, word of faith movement, that's garbage, guys. And everyone involved in it is garbage. So I'm sorry, that's the way it is. A lot of times, the people given are probably worse off than the people that were given. Anytime you give with a pure heart toward the Lord, even if it didn't go where it was supposed to, it's not your fault. The Lord blesses you anyhow. He'll bless you anyhow for your heart. So, but don't be taken by that stuff. You want to give an offering, give it to your church. If you want to give it to somebody, give it to your church and say, we'd like this offering to go to this family or that family, or for this organization or that organization. And let your church tell you whether they should support that organization or not. Because they're going to be a little bit more informed sometimes than we are, as individuals. Because they get the full, from, the Christian movement, they get the full load, what's going on out there, where an individual may not get that. So in 1 Corinthians 16:1, it says, now concerning the collection for the saints, as I have given order in the churches of Galatia, even so do ye. So Paul's telling them, just like I told the church at Galatia to give, I want the church of Corinth to do the same thing. And so then verse number 2, he tells you how to do it upon the first day of the week. Now, if Paul wanted the church of Corinth to do it, you think he wanted the church at Colossae to do it also? How about the church at Laodicea or the church at Ephesus? You think he wanted those churches to do it? Yeah, he wanted Galatia to do it. He wanted the Corinthians to do it. He wanted the letters passed around. He wanted this sent to Laodicea also. And all those churches, Philadelphia, all of them, Thyatira, all Sardis, all of them, Paul wanted them to do this. And he says, upon the first day of the week, let every one of you lay up in him in store as God has prospered him, that there be no gathering when I come. So what he's saying is that when we come together on the first day of the week to worship the Lord, let's lay our offerings aside on that day. So we lay our tithes out there to take care of the things of the Lord, the church and all those things. And then our missionaries, we take that offering out. Any special offerings we might be giving, we'll take that out on that first day of the week. So when that person comes or when that special offering deal comes up, we're not gathering them. We already got the money to take care of it. And that's kind of how we do things. Even, like our revivals and stuff, we don't wait till revival to take up an offering for the revival. If we don't have enough money for a revival, we won't have a revival. You see what I'm saying? God will provide. If God doesn't provide, we won't do it. And so that's the way it works. Now, a lot of churches will they'll have you come just for a love offering and whatever you can take up during that time. But do you know most people don't have any money to give right off the spare of their shoulder? We come to church each evening through a week, and we take up an offering every night. Once we get an offering from you, you're not going to give the same offering every night. You felt like you already gave your offering, so that's about all that evangelist is going to get, unless some new people come in and want to give. But it's not even good for new people to come in and you ask them for money, because then they're, the first thought is, they just got me here to help me support this, to get an offering out of me and that kind of thing. So I don't like that. I like that we can already have the money for the revival. When the evangelist comes, we take care of him. We make sure he's got a place to stay. We make sure he's got food, gas in his car, all those things he might need during that week. And so we'll give him money up front so we know he has spending money, gas money, those kind of things. Because, listen, I can tell you evangelists have come to churches without a dime in their pocket. They're just like you and I. How many of you ever tried to get to work on Friday without a dime in your pocket? I mean, you wonder, if I got enough gas to get there, and if I do, could I borrow a couple dollars to get back home, or until I cash my check or whatever, I mean, I've been there, you know what I'm saying? So I understand that stuff. And that's evangelists, they're no different. Missionaries are the same way. And so a missionary, they may make it here on vapors, So we always try to give them something. We're going to make sure they're going to get to their next place. We'll make sure they have gas in their tank and food in their belly. We're going to give them something, when they leave here, to make sure that we're taking care of God's people. God sent them to us. Why did he send them to us? He expected us to take care of them, didn't he? That's what he did. That's what he does. So that's what we do as a people. 2 Corinthians 8:1 says, moreover, brethren, we do you to wit of the grace of God bestowed on the churches of Macedonia. In 2 Corinthians 9:1, it says, for as touching the ministry to the saints, what we were just talking about, it is superfluous for me to write to you. And verse number 12 says, for the administration of this service not only supplieth the wants of the saints, but is abundant also by many thanksgivings unto God. So basically, going back to superfluous, which is a word I don't use much, and I used to pronounce this word superfluence, but it's actually pronounced superfluous. But that word just means doing unnecessarily. It means doing more than you have to kind of thing. And so when he's saying it's a prevalence for me to write unto you, in other words, it might not be necessary. It might be more than, but this is what I felt like doing. I want to do this. And so here he says, for the administration of this service not only supplieth the wants of the saints, but is abundant also by many thanksgivings unto God. And so this administration, he's talking about the service, he's talking about supplying the wants of those saints in Jerusalem. There was a famine in the land. They were hungry. And if you remember, the people got together, they sold what they had and gave it, laid it at the apostles' feet. They were selling their property, their livestock, they were selling everything just to feed the brethren, just so we could all survive another day kind of thing. And that's what they were doing in Jerusalem. Now we look at that thinking that's something God told them to do. Not necessarily, folks. They just doing that because they felt it necessary. And a lot of times charitable things that we find necessary will cost us something to do it. But it is what God, what God would want us to do according to his word. That's what we're supposed to do, love the brethren. When you love someone, you don't do it in word, but you do it in deed. Yeah. In love and in deed. That's how you do it. Look at verse number 27, Romans 15:27. It has pleased them verily, and their debtors they are. For if the Gentiles have been made partakers of their spiritual things, their duty is also to minister unto them in carnal things. So carnal things, that's physical, material things. And of course, spiritual things, that's the things of God. And so what they were saying here is that it has pleased them verily. And they're debtors they are, he said. They're debtors to it because they've been well pleased, well fed. For if the Gentiles have been made partakers of the spiritual things, talking about the things that God, the grace of God, the message of God to bring them into the family of Christ, it's a small thing for them to share their carnal things. So when he's going to these Gentile churches and saying, we're taking up an offering, for the saints back in Jerusalem, there's a famine in the land. We've got people dying everywhere. They need our help. And these churches, they were given generously. Not of necessity, not begrudgingly, but of a cheerful heart. They were more than glad to do it. And I imagine it was saving some lives. Now, Romans 11, verse number 17 reads like this, and if some of the branches be broken off, thou being a wild olive tree, wert grafted in among them, and with them partakest of the root and the fatness of the olive tree. 1 Corinthians 9 and verse number 11, if we have sown unto you spiritual things, is it a great thing if we shall reap your carnal things? So no, it's not a great thing. That's one of the fruits that come from spiritual things is the fact that people become charitable in their hearts. When God gives you the gift of love, love is not an act, it's not just a word. It's not just an act of feelings. Love is an act of a commitment you make in your heart. When you say, I'm going to love somebody, that commitment is, I'm going to help them if they need it. I'm going to step in when nobody else does. There's only a few people in your whole lifetime that's going to be your real friend, okay? Most people think, we got a lot of friends. Well, call them at 3 o'clock in the morning and tell them you need them right now and see who shows up, okay? You want to know who your real friends are? So you want to have a few guys like that in a lifetime. And so your real friend is that guy that shows up before you can even get off the phone. He's already out that door and headed there because he loves you. He's dedicated. He feels that bond. And, like I always said that, my buddy Mark, my buddy Gary. My buddy Gary's different. He's still my buddy, always will be. And I think if I called Brother Gary, he'd say, well, I don't get up till 7. I'll see you about 8. That's Brother Gary, okay? He would come, but it's going to be on his terms, you know. He goes to bed at 10. You don't call him after 10. He's going to bed at 10 o'clock, you know what I'm saying? And he's getting up at whatever time, 7 in the morning. Every day he's going to do the same routine. And you're not going to mess his routine up. But if I called my buddy Mark, and I said, Mark, my house is on fire, Mark would be there before the fire department. And he's driving from New Richmond. That's the difference. He'd beat the fire department there. And he would help me in any way he could. And that's the way I always felt about Mark, because that's why Mark was always been such a good friend to me. And to him also, I love him to death. And I cried when he cries, I cry. And when he laughs, I laugh. I mean, we're connected like that. So when his wife died, it hurt me just as bad if it was mine. I felt that for Mark, you know. And that's just the way, that's what bonding is. And you'll only have a few friends like that in your lifetime. Only have a few in your lifetime. Now, if he called me 3 o'clock in the morning, you think I'd be at his house? I'm not sure about that. I'd be like, you sure you need me, Mark? And Mark, ain't there someone closer? Call Gary. Get him out of bed. Nah, I'd probably show up, guys. That's just the way it is. If Mark needed, I live over here, he lived over there, but if Mark needed a ride to work, I'd go always to his house and get him and take him to work. But you know what? Mark would do the same thing for me. That's the difference. That's what a real friend is. It's not just words. It's not someone say, I love you, old buddy. Now, Mark tells me he loves me, and I tell him I love him too. But we mean a brother camaraderie, kind of brotherly love that, Mark, I'm there for you, and I know you're there for me too. And that's the way people are supposed to love each other in the church. And that we need to develop that kind of love in your life. And you find friends in the church, and they become good friends. That's the kind of friendship you get. You're going to get somebody that's there for you when you really need it. Now, there are some people, I know them too, people that use people. So you can't be friends to them. You'll know the difference. They'll call you all the time for all kinds of crazy things. But a real friend will only call you when they actually need you. When it's really something really bad and they need something. Now, then you got to be there for them, folks. That's your friend. And you love them. Galatians 6:6, let him that is taught in the word communicate unto him that teaches in all good things. Him that's taught in the word, communicate unto him that teaches in the word, that teaches in all good things. So, all you folks that are learned, you're taught, you learned, you got some things, some knowledge. You're instructors to those others that are teachers too, other disciples. And you can help them. And you need to help them. And so that's how we help one another. The Apostle Paul tells us that we're to pass these things along, the things he's taught us. The things that he has taught unto us, we need to teach unto them also who are able to teach others. And we need to pass those things on. So everybody is teaching somebody. Now, it sounds strange, but have you ever thought about, like, school? A high school kid can teach a grade school kid. He knows more than he does. My mother has an 8th grade education. She taught all us kids. Now, I'm sure an 8th grade education back then was a lot bigger education than what they have today. That's why I always said, if I was in charge, you would only go 2 years of high school. In the next 2 years, you would be in trade school. And then after trade school, like we used to, we had shop, and women had home ec and, home ecs and those kind of things where they trained for the adult life, that you could have a skill when you got out of there and you'd be able to be a homebody or, a good wife or be able to cook and take care of the house and those kind of things too. Back then they didn't expect the woman to make a living. They expected a man to make enough money to take care of his family. Something happened, didn't it? Everything outran us, and it shouldn't have. But there you go. They poured it on us somehow. But used to, people would save the money and buy their house. They didn't have financing. They'd save the money and buy their car. And see, when financing started, then inflation, and then they said, well, you can just finance that. I know you don't have the money to do it, and you can never make it on your own, but you can finance it. And everybody was so far in debt. I mean, good night. But you know what's happening? We're getting there again. During the inflation, people are, and here's another thing. You've been hearing the commercial, right? Ohio is missing out on $600 million a year in taxes. They don't tell you anymore, do they? You know what they're saying? Because we don't legalize the gambling. In other words, they're not going to tell you you're losing $10 billion a year in spending income that they're getting, and the government gets $600 million of it, and you're the one that's getting hurt. Gambling casinos don't lose money, okay? They don't lose money. They base their business on 20%. And I imagine they make a lot more than that. But yeah, they want to get 20 cents out of every dollar, okay? So don't even think that you're going to come out ahead as a gambler. That's not the way it works. And so they legalize gambling. Everybody starts going to the gambling casinos, and you get addicted. You know how you get addicted? You win one time. You hit that thing, and the money comes out. Woo! Man, I'm coming back next week. I'll do it again. That's what happens. I know, and you come back next week, and you lose your paycheck. Oh, man, what am I going to do? I'll go borrow it. And all of us are debtors. Everybody's credit cards are maxed out. And you know what? That's what happens. And we quit buying stoves. We quit buying refrigerators. We quit buying automobiles. And if we're not buying them, they're what? Not making them, right? They're laying people off, right? So who's it hurting? That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. You don't get ahead gambling. Don't ever think you're going to. That's why God says don't, anyway, don't get in a hurry to be rich. That's what he says. Don't try to get rich quick. That's what people think. I'm going to hit the big one. You see, my buddy was a big gambler. He was a horse gambler. Him and I worked together. I really loved the guy. I considered him a good friend. He'd always tell me about the horses when he hit it. He never said a word about them he lost. So when he'd go a long time and not say nothing, I knew he's in a losing streak. He'd be walking around like, But then he hit that one, and he'd be betting, man, I hit the big one this weekend. I got $800 or whatever. No, I'm saying, Harold, how many did you lose? How many hundreds of dollars did you lose till you get this $800? You don't win, folks. It don't work like that. Yeah, there wouldn't be any gambling casinos if we were winners. The gambling casinos are there to be winners. They're going to take your money. Verse 28, Romans 15:28. When therefore I have performed this, and I have sealed to them this fruit, I will come by you into Spain. So the Apostle Paul was planning on going to Spain. And he said that when he did, he would stop at Rome and visit the Romans there and the Roman church. But as far as I know, Paul never made it to Spain. If he did, it was never mentioned. So I don't think Paul ever got there. Though we know he got to Rome, though, because that's where his last days were spent. He was in prison there for about 3 years, and then he lost his head. But there's some things it's worth losing your head over, isn't there? Yeah. Some things you can lose your head over. And you won't miss it, because when you get to heaven, you can get a new one. Yeah, you won't miss it. No. And boy, the one the Lord gives you, you're going to love that so much. You know, I thought it's the best way for me to lose 50 pounds is to get my head cut off. 50 pounds of ugly fat. That's what I always tell them. I'll get rid of that 50 pounds of ugly fat real quick. You know. So that's what Paul felt like. Well, I lost some weight today. I got rid of 50 pounds of ugly fat. And now I'm going to heaven looking for my beautiful heavenly face, you know. Philippians 4:17, not because I desire a gift, but I desire fruit that may abound to your account. So he's talking about the gifts. It wasn't that Paul desired a gift, but it is if the givers gave, as we were saying before, God blessed it. And that would be fruit to your account. Fruit to your account. And so it would add some things to you, some rewards of some kind. Romans 15:29, and I'm sure that when I come unto you, I shall come in the fullness of the blessing of the gospel of Christ. So Paul was sure when he came, man, he was going to come with a full blessing, all that God could bestow upon him and all the anointings or whatever God gave these guys. And these guys had some stuff you and I don't have. And they could do some things you and I can't do. And if you remember, in Acts 14, one of them, when they came and they were working some miracles, and they said that Barnabas, they said he was Jupiter. So they made a god out of him, this god of Jupiter. And then Paul, because he was the leader and the spokesman, he was Mercurius. He was the god of Mercury. So the main one. And they made gods, and they went and got sacrifices and brought them. And they were going to sacrifice to Barnabas and Paul. And Paul had to stop them. Quit it. You know, they made gods out of them right away. And that's what I'm saying today. If these guys really had what the apostles had, they'd be gods. I mean, these people would be sacrificing to them and everything. Most people know that's not real, and that's not what the apostles had. So, yeah, they'd be bowing down, they'd be bringing sacrifices, they'd make gods out of them. That's what they would do. That's why I said that when they sent, when God sent Michael to get the body of Moses, it wasn't because no man could bury Moses. It was because God didn't want anybody to know where Moses was, because if they got Moses, they'd do what? They'd mummify him and make a god out of him. They'd be still worshiping him over there today. And this would be the great god Moses, So God sent Michael to get the body of Moses and bury it. Whatever he buried or wherever, nobody knows. And by the way, they didn't make no god out of it. But you know what they did make a god out of? Moses set up a brazen serpent in the wilderness. And guess what they did? They made a god out of it and started bowing down, sacrificing to it, and worshiping it. That's what they did. Because some miracle came out or came by it. And that's the way people are. I mean, I can see the Antichrist not having any problem getting people to follow him. He just has to do a few miracles. And he will be able to. He's gonna be a miracle worker. And he'll do some real stuff. At least we'll think it's real, whether it is or not. He's strong delusioner. He's going to send you strong delusion. You'll believe the lie. That's the way he will. Romans 1:11 says, "For I long to see you, that I may impart unto you some spiritual gifts, to the end you may be established." So Paul wanted to give them the part there, and I think what he's saying here is not that I'm going to leave some spiritual gifts with you, but that I want to work I'm going to do some spiritual gifts. We're going to see some spiritual things take place while we're there. I mean, I'm going to leave you one with the Holy Ghost, that's for sure. And from that on, maybe some sick folks will be healed. Maybe some things are going to happen. some great things, but we're going to see some things happen while I'm here. I mean, the things is, one of the signs of an apostle was the signs and wonders an apostle could do. Now, if everybody can do them, they'd think everybody was apostles, right? There is no apostles today, folks. The apostles were 12 men. In one now due season, which was the Apostle Paul, actually. And God chose him for a very good reason for the Gentile nations. But there's no apostles today. An apostle had to be somebody that was alive during the time of John's. John the Baptist was baptizing. And he also had to be one that seen Jesus Christ. Now, if you wasn't alive when John was baptizing, you haven't seen Jesus Christ on this earth, then you're not an apostle. And if you go back and look, when they were looking for an apostle to fill Judas's shoes, and they chose Matthias, that was the requirements of an apostle. One that was numbered with us, from John's baptism till, and has seen Christ here on this earth, in order to be one. So you can't be an apostle today. You can't be one. So you see, you can't, because you've never seen it. You weren't baptized by John. You've never seen, the Christ here on this earth. So you can't be an apostle today. Romans 15 and verse number 30, now I beseech you, brethren, for the Lord Jesus Christ's sake, and for the love of the Spirit, that ye strive together with me in your prayers to God for me. So, Paul's just trying to get them to be behind him in what he's accomplished and what he's doing, and that they would be part of it, and they would strive with him, and their prayers would be part of the ministry also. So we need your prayers. We always need your prayers. Church, if you're going to do one thing for your church, you make sure you pray for them daily. And if God lays somebody's name on your heart, you make sure you pray for them. Because they're going to go through something, they need your prayer, and you wouldn't even pray for them. God, He laid that on your heart. God may hold you accountable for that. I don't know how that works. But that's what God does. The Spirit lays these things on our hearts. We always think that we just thought of something to pray, don't we? But prayer actually starts with God. Comes down to you, and then it goes back up to God. It's like a zinc trap. It comes out of your zinc and in the trap, and then back up, and then God works it out. And that's the way prayer is. So He sends it to us, we send it back to Him, and He gets it worked out. It has to be on your heart, folks, if it's an answered prayer. It's something God's going to do. And when God lays it on your heart, pray about it. Pray about it. Prayer is a very important thing in the ministry. In any church, prayer is. And the praying churches are the ones that bloom, the ones that go, the ones that prosper. 2 Corinthians 1 and verse number 11. Ye also, helping together by prayer for us, that for the gifts bestowed upon us by the means of many persons, thanks may be given by many on your behalf. So he's saying your prayers are very important, and that you help together by those prayers, and that for the gifts bestowed upon them, that all the gifts that were given to them, that there's going to be much thanksgiving coming for those gifts, and you're going to be part of it. And now, I don't know how God thanks us, but He's got His own ways of doing it, doesn't He? He does. You'll find it. You'll need something one day. And then God's going to send the thanks to you. And here it comes. Thank you. Thank you for being that person. He says in Romans 15:30, now I beseech you, brethren, for the Lord Jesus Christ's sake and for the love of the Spirit, that you strive together with me in your prayers to God for me. So once again, Paul's talking about that striving together with Him in your prayer life. In your prayer life, let's unite together in our prayer lives. Let's all have the same mind and praying the same thing, seeking God for the same thing. You know what we do? We started a thing, when I was a young Christian at Batavia Baptist Temple, we started a thing about praying for power. And we had the whole church. Eventually, everybody was praying for power. And God empowered that church. That's the only revival I've ever been in. And I'm saying the power of God fell on there because we were praying for it. Church, we need to pray for God's power. We need it to fall in our church. When it starts falling, you'll see the pews start filling up. I mean, our pews fill up. We're putting chairs up and down the aisles. We started a building program. We had to start building a new building. We were running out of space. We had nowhere to put the people. That's a good problem to have. But, I would have went, if it was me, I would have went to 2 services before I'd start a building program. And that building program killed us. Killed us, man. And it killed a church. You know why? Because you put too much on the people. And they can't handle it. So they get tired of hearing it. And they quit coming. So the church will die as fast as it came alive. The same way. So you got to be careful. You got to keep people spiritual. You got to keep that cheerful feeling in them that what they're doing is right, that kind of thing. You get in a building program, it's one of the hardest things you'll ever go through. People are picking on each other. Why weren't you down here Saturday? Where were you Saturday? We were all down here working. Where were you? And that's the kind of stuff that killed the church. And then the preachers up there every service, we need $900,000. We need $200,000 before this particular date. You guys, we need you to dig in, and do this and do that. And everybody's digging in. And you ain't got no place to dig anymore. And the people are saying, oh, my goodness, I think I'm going to go down to the other church Sunday. They're not in the building program. And that's what happens. See? So we've got to be careful about some things. We're going to stop here on verse number whatever. Verse number 30. Philippians 2:1. Let me read this first. If there be therefore any consolation in Christ, if any comfort of love, if any fellowship of the Spirit, if any bowels of mercy. So here he is talking about what we find in Christ. We find consolation. We find comfort and love. We find fellowship of the Spirit. And we find bowels of mercy. If these things exist, and they do, then they're in us. They're for us. That's the things we need in our church. Galatians 4:12. Epaphras, who is one of you, a servant of Christ, salute you. Always laboring fervently for you in prayer, that you may stand perfect and complete in all the will of God. In all the will of God. So when we get back, well, I'm missing verse number 30. Oh, I must have already read it, didn't I? I did. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't have it highlighted. Yeah, I read verse 30 already. Okay. We're going to be on 31 when we get back together. Verse 31. Okay. Any questions or discussion or